Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming, and in just one more day, back to the beta. This will be your final chance to play Wilds before launch though, so I wanted to cover some useful topics to keep in mind, the details of this last beta, how long you've actually got, various tips I've learned from say the first run of beta 2, but I want to get straight to the point on a lot of this stuff, so let's just begin. Firstly, the final beta and how long you have. If you're unaware, something weird happened last weekend with PSN's network, and kindly, the Monster Hunter team have decided to extend the beta test by 24 hours total because of it. So while originally we were only going to get 3 days again this weekend, we now have an extra 24 hours on this final run of the beta. This means it begins on February 14th at 3 AM GMT UK time, where I am, until the 18th, again ending at 3 AM. In America, that'd be then the evening of the 13th to the evening of the 17th by comparison. Therefore, you get 4 days total of the last beta before launch, so make the most out of it. For being part of the beta at any point, you will unlock a little pendant plushie for both your weapon and Seikret in the full game, but for this second beta in particular, there are some small rewards that will be useful for very early Monster Hunter. You get some traps and trank bombs, which means you can capture any of the early monsters to end the hunt quicker if you choose to, or useful stuff like barrel bombs for early wake-up sleep hits, armor spheres for upgrading armor early. It's all useful, just nothing to go nuts over. But just like any new Monster Hunter game, where you start with basically no supplies, it is nice to have these. In this beta then, you'll have 3 main sections. Firstly, character creation, which lets you customize your character and palico, but not your Seikret. It has been confirmed that customization of the Seikret will be in the full game, unlocked at a certain point in the story, but for now, we just want to make use of this creator as much as you want, because it's infinitely unlocked in the beta. At launch, we should expect this to be a paid feature, so make sure you're happy with customization now. If you want to do it and you've already made your character, just go to any tent and go to the 5th tab, that's where character customization is. The second section is the story mission with that first hunt of chatacabra. If you've already done that, you'll just dive straight back into the third section from the get-go, which is the doshaguma hunt and open hunting after you've done that. So if you've already done that, your main quest will update and Alma will speak to you both about Gypsyros and Arkveld. Arkveld will just be given to you as an optional quest. Meanwhile, Gypsyros is slightly more awkward, funnily. Gypsyros appears to be an unknown monster on the map. During the time of fallow, that's when it might show up. So if you're having any issues with that, I'd recommend you join a multiplayer lobby and then join up on someone else's listing of that hunt. After you've taken part of any hunt of Gypsyros, you will have the optional quest unlocked to do it whenever you want from then on. But what about Arkveld? Well, as you guys likely know now, it's going to be a tough hunt under strict requirements in this beta. You'll have to defeat Arkveld in 20 minutes or less with a max limit of 5 carts. That will be harder for some weapons in this beta because, for example, some weapons have better output, like bow being heavily overperforming in this beta compared to other weapons. Or say, your traditionally element-based weapons such as jewel blades, you're stuck here with basic raw hope blades alongside a complete lack of proper key skills for that weapon. So for some weapons it's going to be an extra hard challenge, but that does make it a lot of fun. Here's some quick tips to help with that Arkveld hunt though. Most notably about Arkveld is the fact that you can trap him, which also means you can trank bomb him and capture him. This will end the hunt as soon as you get him to skull level health. But where am I getting the trank bombs from? In the beta, it's a bit awkward in the Windward Plains. There are 2 spawns for parashrooms to get and 1 spawn for sleep herbs. You're going to need 1 parashroom, 1 sleep herb to craft 1 trank bomb, and to capture a monster after it's in a trap, you need 2 trank bombs. These nodes where you're picking up parashrooms and sleep herbs will respawn about every 15 minutes, so be aware of that. But you can have your palico come over to the node and pick it up for you. That gets you extra materials without actually consuming the node, then you can pick it up yourself and put it on that cooldown, essentially doubling the amount of materials you get from it. So be doing this every now and then, and you'll be fine for trank bombs. In regards to some specific tips for Arkveld then, be aware that his chain slam attacks, where he does that flight backflip and then a chain slam, maybe he'll combo that into another chain slam, or maybe he'll even be enraged so he's got 4 chains instead of 2, where it's even more dangerous. Be sure to roll in line with the head, staying directly in front of Arkveld on these chain slams. This will prevent you from being caught by the slower second chain slam, and leaves you in a nice spot to actually attack the exposed chains or move to the head. Speaking of the head, during his biggest super move, when he's turning the chains red and sending out this multi-explosion in front of him, you can actually push under his head and neck to avoid the attack, since the initial explosion is just ahead of him, not at the head. This leaves you in a great spot to punish him, where actually you get a pretty big DPS window. Offensive pods should be equipped in some form throughout the whole hunt. That's because during the grab, you can interrupt it by firing an offensive pod into his mouth. That could also include things like flash pods, or even dunk pods work too, so make sure pods are equipped. Don't forget cool tips like the many boulder drops around the region. Say as you're going into the cave, there's at least 3 there you could drag him into for some free DPS windows. As well as high up into the areas of area 4 and 5, there's 3 you can drop there, and even a ledge that it can be broken while he's standing on it to knock him down. One bonus tip I want to give is to do with sneak attacks. There's this interesting bug that I'm not sure will make it to live, we'll see. It's that during turf wars, the monster basically forgets you exist, which means you're now in stealth, as it were, meaning you can sneak attack a monster while it's mid-turf war. And in fact, against Arkveld, when it was against doshaguma, I was able to sneak attack it multiple times in a row, which is kind of crazy. So, why not take the free damage if you can? But yeah, if you want a full guide on all kinds of tips and information like that, I have a video about Arkveld on exactly that right now. Next, I want to reference the new training area. You can find it in the base camp at the back. Just head on over and head inside. There you'll find a few things, like the supply chest where you can swap gear and change your palico settings, the dummy itself, but importantly, the palico you can speak to change the settings of the dummy. Here you can swap between things like neutral, smash, and ranged attacks. And I highlight this because something I've heard from friends during this beta is that offsets are really hard to land. There's no doubt that the timing on them is a bit weird compared to, say, a regular counter. So I would recommend this training dummy and that smash setting for practicing offset timings. They're very strong, and if you can get the hang of them, they're actually insane against Arkveld and some of those chain slams. So learn it. Next, don't forget too that in this second beta we have new options for multiplayer, like private lobbies and online single player. Private lobbies are used for groups of friends to play together or separately at will, so you might pop up and see them in base camp or join their hunts and play together, compared to seeing a load of random people in the base camp. While online single player is just yourself, but it is online because you have the ability to use an SOS flare when you want to join other players and go into multiplayer if you choose to. Moving on, let's run down a few more quick tips. For the beta, make sure you go into the tent and go to the item tab screen and make some kind of registered loadout. There's a lot of supplies in the chest they give you, such as loads of nullberries and traps and resources in general, but for some reason the basic set that you're given has barely anything in it. So make an item loadout and then you can restock instantly by using that loadout. There's also armor sets that we can swap between. My suggestion for these, based on what we have, is to make an armor set that gives you faster mounting, which is pretty much just 3 of the balahara set, I believe. Essentially, you'll trigger mounts faster while this is equipped, which is certainly a useful thing for tougher fights like Arkveld. I'm able to get off 2 mounts in that fight easily when using a set like this. And alternatively, if you have offsets, I'd recommend that you equip 4 pieces of the doshaguma armor set. This gives you a damage bonus after you land an offset, so if you have those, definitely worth using. Lastly, for the tent, I just want to reference the fact that cooking buffs have changed. They last 30 minutes in this beta, so basically, you don't need to eat after every hunt you complete, and you can easily check the timer at the top left above your health bar. If you're on a controller, hold L1, and that'll give you slightly more information, such as how long's left on your buff timers. Next, for pop-up tent locations, there's 3 places I'd like to recommend to you for the Windward Plains. First is the Oasis Cave. There is a camp that you can put up at the Oasis, but it's dangerous and monsters will destroy it. There's also a tent you can put out on the dunes slightly to the east. Again, fine, but it's a bit out of the way. If you go into the cave at the Oasis, there's a secret camp down there that's actually safe. This can be a great way to get to the Oasis above, or lead you into some of the underground caves very smoothly. Next would be Area 4 and 5, the high up nest, where Arkveld goes up for sections of the fight. You do lose a lot of time in the hunt travelling up there, so having a fast travel spot up there is a good idea. There is a camp location that's more dangerous you can put up at the top, or a more secret cave to the east that's going to be safer as an option. Lastly, I want to reference the plateau that's on the way to Raidal's Nest. Just before you start heading to it, it's going to be a good location to get to the final fight, or just get a fast travel to those dunes in general. Now, a quick couple things with the Seikret and things to know about that. Firstly, there is a mode that you can turn off that's allowing the Seikret to make its own decisions about where it takes you. So you might choose to stand still, and then the Seikret decides to move anyway and take you to a randomly relevant location. I'm not sure what the feature is meant to do, but for me, it's just very invasive and annoying, especially when I want to stay still. So turn that off and the Seikret will stop doing it. For a couple cool mechanics with the Seikret, did you know you can actually drift for a fast 180 turn? While you're sprinting, if you press R2 on a controller or the stop button and hold it and then turn, you'll stop moving and then do a 180 while turning. This can allow you to suddenly turn around very quick if you're in a tight, dangerous spot. Don't forget that the Seikret can also be a great way to get off the ground. If you've taken a nasty hit from a monster and you've been knocked down, if you press up on the D-pad to call the Seikret, it'll come pick you up off the ground, saving you, getting you out of a bad spot. It's a really good trick. Lastly, there are dismount attacks that can be unique based on the weapon you're using. Some are really strong, like Longsword has a literal parry on theirs. Meanwhile, something like Dual Blades, they have a special spin for their dismount attack, which is actually their best aerial damage option for armor Seikret dismount, so make sure you're using those. But finally, a quick mention of something pretty special for us. Myself and Josh actually went to Capcom's London office last month, where we played the opening section of the full game, and even further on into the 4th locale. We were allowed to record it, and are finally now allowed to talk about that experience. So I want to say a huge thank you again to Capcom for that opportunity, and please be aware that our videos on that experience are out now if you're interested. But that will cover it for today. I hope this quick overview of all the things to do with Beta 2 and this final weekend was useful. If you guys have any extra information, or maybe some tips for people to make the best use of this last bit of time before launch, let us know in the comments. But for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.